section snatched me out by the head. I glanced at the calendar and it read 1971, the 13th of August. Denise gave birth to a dream, a single mother all alone, and it hurts. A bastard child, Pop Duke, is in the dirt. Now I'm in the bridge on the block called Vernon, when girls didn't know a damn thing about burning. Remembering the days of my youth, bust my first nut on a project roof. Now I'm on my way to PS 111. Miss of the tricks living in ghetto heaven. That's when I first saw the face of death. Yeah. And none of the other brothers are left, like my man Taye from around the way. On the stage coach where we used to play. You couldn't tell me then we wouldn't live forever. Welcome back, now we got it all together. Love is light and we live by the day. Peace to the brothers who passed away. Away. Look into this day, you passed away. All my people's passed away, they passed away. Well, look into this day, you passed away. Check it out. Bust the move. Grand Groove. Bust the move. We love you, Grand Groove. Bust the move. Grand Groove. Bust the move. Yeah. Trying to maintain with the joy and pain. There's a lot to lose and a lot to gain. From beginning to end, again I intend. When I lost you, I lost my best friend. You gave me a home and a life that was decent, but instead I ended up in the precinct. A lost soul I didn't understand how precious life was until I was a man. I seen a lot of my friends die in the projects, lost their lives over material objects, but you tried to save me from a young death. So I strive to my last breath. You were the start of my family tree. Gave birth to Junior and then came me. Grand Groove, grandmother, sister and my brother, best friend to me. There can never be another. Cause I really need you today. Peace to the mothers who passed away. To the essence. What I do miss your presence. Too busy trying to be slick and getting over. Back in the days, I used to wish I was older. And I remember. I used to sneak in the house with my eyes all red. Duck the blow that was aimed for my head. Running the streets like a runaway slave. I didn't know you was headed for the grave. Never miss a good friend until they're gone. As long as I'm alive, you're gonna live on and on. Since your best friend has to be a brother, a friend is someone who's always there for another. No more snakes in the grass when you're near. Grand Groove, I love you and I wish you were here. I still love you to this very day. One love, Grand Groove, you passed away. Intuition, and you really don't have nothing if you intuition. I work with light just to give birth to life. I was born in all forms in the perfect night. The black god got big lips and black rods. As soon as I leave Earth, it's back to the start. I am the ruler, just like the Lion of Judah. My third eye was built like an iron computer that's dark matter and deep thought making your heart shatter. I sleepwalk, talking with smart chatter, so I don't need you to ride or die with me. I got ancestors that vibe from the other side with me, and they beam up life after death. We got noses on our eyes, cause the lights are breath. My priceless flesh, the final copy. Look like Anunnaki, like God. Got big lips and black rod. In the projects, Rich is whipping that black hard. I'm just saying, my skills is whipping that crack hard. Look at LeBron James. The black guard got big lips and black bras. As soon as I leave Earth, it's back to the stars. Prior to job lives with jewelers and girls, just ask nods if I rule the world. Yo, the black guard got big lips and black bras in the projects. Rich is whipping that black car. My rhymes the same. My skills is whipping that crack hard. Look at LeBron James, that nigga's a black guard. And you wonder why we spit lead. Just the whole reps, niggas got big heads like old Max. Way that I'm writing is more than vain. This is the age of enlightenment. We the Moors in Spain. Now that your honor, I pray to a black vagina. Even the Pope pray to the black Madonna. In the sun, I shine as bright as I be. I'm the greatest of all time, like Muhammad Ali. And when I die, baptized in the fire. Only fly at night, black skies are higher. Prior to job, my lives with jewelers and girls. Just sex nods if I rule the world, rubies and pearls. Black guard, got big lips and black bra. In the projects, rich is whipping that black car. Rhymes insane, my skills is whipping that crack hard. Look at LeBron James. The black guard got big lips and black bra. As soon as I leave Earth, it's back to the stars. Prior to job lives with jewelers and girls. Just sex nods if I rule the world. Yo, the black guard, from infinite to infinite stars, it's infinite light. My life's got an infinite charge. The instruments I implement to give strength to your heart. The temple within, the imprint, mimic the art. Into the dark, the dragon spark the fathom from a higher consciousness. I talk with atoms, I live in the land, and I live in the stars, original man. I am the image of God, call me Tut, I'm common. I cut diamonds, so as long as I live, nothing can stop shining. You gon' need to be in the bins to drive me crazy. Live on CNN, hearing cries from Haiti. You know the people down there trying to hide them babies. The black guards, surrounded in light, attract stars. Black guards, surrounded in light, attract stars. The black guards, surrounded in light, attract stars. I told you, all of my critics, I told you all that I was the greatest of all time. All of you, I know you got it. I know you got it. But the man been coming. I'm gonna show you how great I am. I told you, I'm the real champion. I told you, I'm the champion of all. All of you know. All of our critics know. All of you know. Peace, 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 peace. You're now rocking with the best. You're now under the sounds of your brother Hanu Kiel, aka A1, aka Thompson's one. And I'm just putting this out there. We got a heavyweight jam alert. Damn, you know the siren sound effect would be great right about now, but we got a heavyweight jam alert. We got the guy back up in the building. But before we go in, just peace to all the Aborigines, North and South, Central, the conjoined islands, and also the brothers and sisters that sent across seas, that's living in Europe and other parts of the world that come from the Amaru Key, that are the Amaru Kins, aka the Americans or the Aborigines or the Atanchans. Shout out to everybody in the chat room. I've been actually, taking on some new ventures, so I haven't really been in full form. But don't worry about it though. I got my brother with me, and he definitely gonna take the torch. Brother teach me a lot. We build behind the scenes, and he also a good friend of mine, man. You know what I'm saying? Definitely shout out to my brother Amani Bay. But like I said before we go on, I just want to just put this out there. Um, Shout out to like all the new people, or some of the brothers and sisters that have been passing the torch, that have been keeping this information going. It doesn't matter on who you're getting the information from, as long as the information is still flowing. Shout out to my brother AP, my brother Jaguar, my brother Supreme Chief Holiday, always in the building. And everybody else, man, the brothers and sisters, always gotta give a shout out. Like I said, man, I'll be back in full form when I get time. But you got a lot of people out there putting information in that's holding it down. And for now, you know what I'm saying, they doing a great job. So let them continue on holding it down. So with no further ado, I'd like to introduce the God, Amani Bay, and peace to everybody out there. I'll mute my mic.
All right, good evening, family. It's great to be back. And I had to schedule this part two um, pretty soon here. Last week we did part one, and I hope everyone listened to part one because I don't want to go back to go over, you know, similar concepts. We must move on. I know it's in the evening time there, and a lot of people want to go to sleep. So we're going to try to keep it around 2 hours today. Just get right to the information. But again, before that, as always, I'd like to thank everyone for taking your time to listen. We had some turbulence last week, unfortunately, when we were kind of cut off for a few minutes. But we managed to pull through, and that was great. So hopefully this will be smoother. And again, I'd like to just thank everyone and just remind everyone of what our purpose is. Our purpose is to provide information. And the great nonetheless made probably the most pathetic statement of the century when he said that this is a crime scene, right? And I kind of added to that. So we're dealing with multiple serial killers, right? And so we're kind of like detectives here. Everyone who's contributing information to this crime scene, we're like investigative detectives, right? And so our only job is to help solve this mystery, these unanswered questions, right? And like a serial killer, now we're not dealing with one serial killer. We're dealing with multiple serial killers, right? And this crime scene, stretches over centuries. No one solved it yet, and so the line of the investigative detectives continues into the generations, right? So everyone will contribute to solving these mysteries and these uncovering these secrets, unmasking the truth here, right? And so our job is to contribute information. And every other detective, investigative detective, we're going to learn from each other. We're going to take each other's information and build off on it. That's what it's all about. It's about teamwork here. You see, so and everyone can make a contribution, and those that make contributions, everyone makes a strong impact, and that's why I always give honors and shout outs to other investigators who I looked at their work and learned a lot from their work and expanded upon their work, but I always give them the credit for that. So it's just like you write a scholarly article, you have to give a bibliography and citations. So it's similar whenever we're giving oral presentations, right? Because we have to go into this again humble, um, and that basically we don't know anything. No one has the answers, because if anyone had the answers, then this mystery, this crime scene would have been solved. And those that have been denationalized, those that have been lied to, um, would be free. But we know that that's not the case. So no one has figured this out yet. So we go into this endeavor humble and basically like children. We don't have all the answers. And hopefully we can make contributions that will make a strong impact. And if we can't do it in our lifetime, we will leave a lot of information and tools for the next generation of investigative detectives. So, just to briefly go over some of the themes and topics that we dealt with last week. Now, of course, the title is The Devil's Greatest Trick. Okay? And the devil's greatest trick, as we all know, is that the devil basically convinced the world that he does not exist. So one expression of that is, playing the victim, the greatest victim on the planet, that everyone's after him or her. No one likes him or her. You see, so they're suffering. So we're going to unmask these particular devils who've tried to convince the world that they did not exist, that they're the victims. We're going to unmask that. And, it's never about, whenever we're bringing evidence and trying to solve this great crime scene, these mysteries and ancient secrets, it's never personal. We can't go into this with agendas, because the opponents, that's what they do. They have agendas. It's personal. So, and they go into it to prevent us from accomplishing our jobs. But we cannot have that approach, because then we'll never figure this out. So our duty is to present the facts, present the evidence, with devoid of our personal input or feelings, right? So I'm going to show extraordinary evidence and facts and information. Okay, it's not going to be easy to take this information, but this information has been buried and it's been right in our face. These individuals have been right in our face the entire time. We're going to unmask them, and you're going to see who they really are, right? So just to review what we did last week, we basically presented the opponent's position in their arguments, and via the short documentaries we saw. And so they mentioned things like that. They mentioned things such as slaves being brought from the continent of Africa to America, and basically that those particular slaves are all dark hue melanated. So they basically equate, if anyone has, in America is dark complexion, then they have to be a slave, and they have to be from Africa. And said slaves from Africa had no rights to land, had no rights to an education, basically tillered in the fields with no compensation, no salary. So these are the things that the opponent presented. And then so I basically disputed their information. And we're going to continue with that, because I unfortunately I could not finish last week. And the very first thing is to complete what I was bringing forth regarding Captain Paul Slocum, aka Captain Paul Cuffey. And I wanted to first, we're going to get into this particular article here about Captain Paul Slocum, aka Paul Cuffey. Now, many of the Afrocentrics tell us that he is the son of a slave, and he was part of the Society of Friends. Okay, I have this interesting newspaper article. And this article, here, let me blow it up. Let me share my screen first here. And this article is in 1814, I believe. Let me blow it up. Let me share my screen first. We're going to get into this article, and it's pretty interesting what it says about Mr. Paul Slocum, or Captain Paul Slocum. Share screen. Okay. Am I sharing? No, I don't think so. Hold on a second. Share screen. I guess I am sharing. Hold on a second. Where is my phone? Let me see if I'm sharing or not. Excuse me, family. I don't really look at the comments, unfortunately. Let's see. Type in one if you can see that newspaper article, please. I need to know if that's viewable there. No, no one can see that. Okay, hold on. Okay, hold on. They can't see. Hold on. Oh, I don't think A1 allowed me to share the screen first. Hold on a second here. There we go. There we go. How about now? Can you see that?
You gotta redo it, Amani. It ain't up there.
It's not up? I thought they can see it. They said they can see it now.
They can see it. I don't. No, no, no. I don't see it on my screen, so I don't. I don't see you sharing it. Do it again.
Okay, hold on. Share. Share screen.
You gotta get that share screen going, man. There you go. Yeah, we need this.
You can see it now?
You in there now? You in there now?
Okay, awesome. Thanks. Yeah.
There you go. You see everything.
Okay, great. You can see that now?
Yup. You good? You in there?
Oh, all right, thanks. So let's blow this up, and I want to make it zoom in so everyone can see. Okay, let's go over here. Make it bigger here so we can all see this closely. A little bit smaller. Okay, now this is an interesting article here. Okay, let's go through this here. From the Edinburgh Review. Subject caption, Paul Cuffey. Under the head of Africa, we must also notice the very judicious plan of profiting by the opportunity of inducing Captain Paul Cuffey to settle in Sierra Leone and carry over with him free blacks of good character and of some property, who might settle in the colony and practice among the natives the mechanical arts and the cultivation of tropical produce. Paul Cuffey, as many of our readers know, is a free black who, by his industry and talents, has acquired considerable wealth, a part of which he invests in trade, commanding his vessel in person, and manning her with a fine crew of free Negroes. They were lately in this country, and of course, that country being Edinburgh. They were lately in this country and attracted universal respect by the propriety of their deportment, as well as admiration by their singular proficiency in both the science and the practice of navigation. The African board held a meeting, although in vacation time, for the purpose of seeing and conferring with the captain. His Royal Highness the Duke of Gloucester attended, as he always does, at the board, and together with the other directors, entered fully into the subject, alike interesting to those distinguished philanthropists and to their dark-colored but civilized ally. They were highly, let me pull this up. They were highly grade-titled with the interview and were led to form the most sanguine expectations of the benefits to be derived from this act of cooperation. Their application for a grant of land was unhappily rendered unsuccessful by the intervention of hostilities with America. Captain Cuffey being a citizen of the United States, but we trust that some means may still be found of renewing a negotiation so manifestly calculated to carry civilization into Africa by the most sure and practical road. This is in truth precisely the principle of the plan pursued with such signal success by the Quakers in civilizing the North American Indians. We formally called the attention of our readers to this subject, and by referring to what was there, detailed the grounds of our confident expectations from the present plan may be seen. In the meantime, it is gratifying to learn that Paul Cuffey, refining all his zeal for the improvement of his race, is now exerting himself in America with the great object of civilization constantly before him. Okay, so this is telling here, family. So we basically get a little view into what was going on and the desires of the African board in Europe and their plans to basically set up a colony in Sierra Leone. And so here, as they say here, they wanted to induce Captain Cuffey, Paul Cuffey, to settle in Sierra Leone and carry over with him free blacks of good character, etc. So it was never, based upon this article and this evidence here, family, it was never Paul Cuffey's idea. So it was this African board in Europe, along with the Duke of Gloucester, to induce Captain Paul Cuffey to help them settle that colony there and so-called bring civilization into that colony of Sierra Leone. Now, the interesting thing is that they did not mention that Captain Paul Cuffey was himself from Sierra Leone or any other African nation at that time. I find that telling there. So I just wanted to share with the family this here particular article on Mr. Paul Cuffey. And of course, the article refers to him as a free black and his crew as quote unquote free Negroes. And as you remember last week, we went over the Naturalization Acts of 1790, 1795, and 1870. And pursuant to the Naturalization Acts of 1790, the only foreign individuals that can be naturalized in the United States at that particular time were free whites, which is a class. Now, I shared with the family the Black's Law 4th edition definition of free whites before. So I want to do that again. Hopefully you guys will have that, but you can refer to that. Now, that particular definition made it clear that at that particular time, 1790, free whites did not include Caucasians. Okay, so go refer to that definition in the Black's Law Dictionary. So now, remember Mr. Paul Cuffey, we're going to pull up the actual 1790 census. Okay, we're going to pull this up here now so we can all take a look at it. With Mr. Paul Slocum. That's his real name, Paul Slocum. Okay, so he was born around 1757. So he would have been 33 years old in 1790. So now, 1790 census, the very first United States federal census, very first one, okay, under the federal government. And of course, the names of heads of the families, and of course, each individual here on this census were at the time United States citizens. Now remember, this is pre-1870. The 1870 Naturalization Act, as you remember last week, allowed persons of African nativity and African descent to be naturalized as United States citizens. Okay, so therefore, based on what the laws, the naturalization laws were at the time, in 1790, people of African descent and African nativity were not allowed to be citizens. Okay, so here we have 1790 census, and we pull right over here. Right there. I'm blind here or something. Hold on a second, friend. I'll just leave it right here. Okay, right here. Here he is here. All right, let's blow it up, make it bigger so everyone can see. Make it bigger. Paul Slocum. Now, this is going to become even more clear because we're going to unmask other individuals on censuses. Okay, right there, family. Paul Slocum, the 1790 census. If anyone has access to Ancestry or MyHeritage, you can research that up yourself. Paul Slocum, aka Paul Cuffey, on the 1790 census. Right? So therefore, this highly disputes that he was of African descent or African nativity, because they were not allowed to be citizens pre-1870. So remember, we always have to apply the law to history to confirm whether or not something's true or untrue, or sound or unsound, etc. And so now, again, last week, we went over a bit about standing. And right now, there's been a lot of discussions with the Afrocentric Pan-African community. And I stated several times that we should not waste time entertaining such discussions because, as I mentioned before, they lack standing. Okay? So there are more important things we need to do. And remember, we're investigative detectives trying to solve this crime scene with these myriad of serial killers. Whenever we entertain that, boom, we're outside the room. We're outside of the scope of what our main job function is. Okay? So we must treat them the same as the courts treat them. So in this particular case, which was decided December 13th, 2006, NRE, African American Slave Descendants Litigation, right? Where they were trying to, argue for reparations. And everyone can look this case up, Seventh Circuit, and Chief Judge Richard Posner and Judge Mannion decided this here issue as it was appealed up to this particular Seventh Circuit Court. And they lost based upon no standing. Now, so what that means is, so basically, before the court will even entertain the merits of your argument, you have to first prove standing, that your claim is basically valid, right? So let's get into basically what the ruling and the reasoning was behind the no standing holding from the Second Circuit. Okay, I'm going to pull this up here so everyone can see it. Make it bigger. Okay, so we can understand the reasoning here. Okay, now there was another case for reparations, and this was the descendants of the Tulsa, Oklahoma incident in 1921, right? And it was their lawyer was the Honorable Charles Ogletree, Harvard professor. So he litigated on behalf of the Tulsa descendants, right? And so the court is discussing here. So let's read this here. I'll make it a little bigger here. The court finds that plaintiffs, including descendant plaintiffs, have made the general factual allegations of injury resulting from defendants' conduct sufficient to meet the requirements of Lejeune versus Defenders of Wildlife. Okay? Now, so basically what the court's saying here, these particular descendant plaintiffs in the Tulsa, Oklahoma action, legal action, cleared the hurdle of standing. Okay, now we're going to find out why. Moreover, in African American slave descendants litigation, which is the case I just showed you from the Seventh Circuit, is factually distinguishable. So the court is basically saying that the descendant plaintiffs in the Tulsa, Oklahoma action, legal action, they're different than the plaintiffs in the reparations African American slave descendants action. Here's why. The descendant plaintiffs in this case, talking about the Tulsa, Oklahoma case, do not claim derivative injury resulting from a wrong done to a population in general. Okay, now let's stop there. Let's analyze this particular sentence. So, a derivative injury resulting from a wrong done to a population in general. So when you hear a lot of the Afrocentrics and Pan-Africans talk, they speak in general terms. So that, oh, you know, we were African slaves brought over and suffered under the institution of slavery for hundreds of years, right? But that's a very general about an entire population of so-called African slaves, right? Now, let's continue reading here. Rather, they being the descendant plaintiffs in the Tulsa, Oklahoma incident, they are alleging specific injury as a result of being the descendant of a specific victim of the race riot. And they are claiming a direct link to the damages caused by the riot. The court finds that these allegations are sufficient to withstand a motion to dismiss on grounds of standing. Now, this is very, very important, family, because this case here is the case we all must use and refer to when we're also seeking remedy, because here with the Tulsa, Oklahoma descendants, their allegations were not general, very specific, where they showed that who the ancestor was, how they were related genealogically to that ancestor who was injured, and how that injury was a causal link to them. Okay, so I've always told the Afrocentrics or the Pan-Africans, I can help you out here. That's why they must prove standing first before we entertain discussions with them. Treat them like the court like the law treats them. Remember, when you lack standing in an action, Your claim is frivolous, without merit. So why would we spend time? I mean, it's basically like having conversations with the writer of a comic book. It's the same thing. Until one of them, just like in this particular case with the Tulsa, Oklahoma action lawsuit, until they show a specific ancestor that they are genealogically connected to, the nation they came from, the ship manifest, what state plantation they were on, and detail those injuries, and then how that directly connects to them as a descendant of that specific ancestor. Then they'll have a chance of clearing the standing hurdle. Until then, you don't need to waste time. So just wanted the family to know what is standing, that everyone's clear on this, because the law and the courts ruled on this several times. And they're very, very clear. But you notice when they're talking about reparations and these people, they never get into the law about it, right? Because a lot of them are basically, these it's what they're getting. They create these House resolutions to basically look into the subject of slavery, and then they get funding. So again, it's a way to make money for those, because if you can get $50 million funding to research the topic of this, then people can get generate finance that way, and that's what's going on. So let's not waste time. Next time they want to entertain an argument with you, tell them to prove standing first. And that means they must show you their own specific genealogy of an ancestor from a particular nation who was brought over with all that evidence and suffered. And if they can't do that, do not entertain the merits of their argument. Okay, so let's move on here. And last week, I briefly showed the image of Honorable William Dennison, and we're going to show that here again. There it is. There.
Hey, real quick,
Yes.
is that the goddamn devil?
Nope. It's the devil's mask. Remember, the devil's greatest trick is to
Yeah.
convince the world he doesn't exist.
Mm.
So the devil is the real William Dennison. This is his mask. See, so he's a puppet master in the background. You never see him. You never deal with him. You'll never know what he looks like. So he puts this image out, posing as himself. And this is what we were dealing with. Because
Gotcha.
remember, we've been dealing with this for centuries, and then the real evil one wants us to believe that this is our problem. But we've thought that for hundreds of years, and have we solved this crime scene yet? No. Which means we've been looking at the wrong images or the wrong individuals. The real enemy is unseen, but we're going to unmask that real enemy today.
Get your magnifying glasses out.
Okay? Now, let's get to the article. I couldn't find it last week. I apologize for that, family. The funny thing is, it was right in the first column the entire time, right? So let's blow this up, find out who this Mr. Honorable William Dennison is. Okay? Okay. Hopefully everyone can see that. Let's scroll down a bit. Okay. Let's get over here. Oh, okay, let's scroll up. Okay, down. Okay, here we is right here, family, right here. What the South is to expect. Okay. Mr. Dennison, the black Republican candidate for governor of Ohio, has made the following declaration. If I'm elected governor of Ohio, I expect to be no fugitive slave shall be sent back to Kentucky or any other slave state. If I cannot otherwise protect him from his pursuers, I will employ the bayonet, so help me God. Okay? So here in this 1859 Sentinel newspaper, Mr. William Dennison, governor of Ohio, and he actually did become the governor. He here says he was a candidate for governor. He became the governor of Ohio, the black Republican. Okay? Now, this has been hidden. This is the 1850s, before the so-called after the Civil War, the Reconstruction. Okay. Now I showed when we're going to get into another individual. They were everywhere, especially in the North. Now sometimes to cover their tracks, they'll come out with modern current explanations to say, oh well, the Black Republican meant that was the label they were, just labeling the pale skinned politicians because they supported the so-called slavery cause. So they just threw that on him. Now remember, family, in one of my earlier presentations, we had the article about Abraham Lincoln. And in that particular article, he was also described as a black Republican. Now we all know, there's lots of evidence. We know what the real Abraham Lincoln looked like. And we know he was also melanated. So don't fall for the modern day sorcery, right? I'm trying to explain that, the black Republican meant something else, because the same tag was on Abraham Lincoln. The same tag was on those individuals in the state of Louisiana, like Oscar Dunn. They were also called black Republicans. So don't fall for the sorcery. So this is the article here. And if anyone wants this particular newspaper article or any other thing I present today, reach out to me via email. Okay, so let's move on to this next image here. This is the distinguished Mr. Honorable Valentine B. Horton, member of the House of Representatives, also in Ohio. Right? So let's get to the old newspaper articles, 1856. Okay? And let's blow this up and look and see the real William Valentine B. Horton of Ohio. This is the 1856 Democrat. Let's look at the title of the newspaper. All these newspapers, family, I get from the Library of Congress. The MacArthur Democrat, Thursday, October 2nd, 1856 edition. Okay? Way before the Civil War, right? Before Reconstruction. Okay. Valentine B. Horton voted to extend the fugitive slave law over Kansas and Nebraska. He disobeyed the will of his own party in Ohio. And let's read a little bit of this here, family. Valentine B. Horton and every other black Republican in the lower house of Congress, save Ben Leiter, voted for the extension of the fugitive slave law over Kansas and Nebraska. Okay, so they voted for that. Now, interesting over here in this first column. Let's take a look at over here. Here. The Black Republicans in the House of Representatives have done what Mr. Clay said he never would do. They have voted to extend slavery over Kansas and Nebraska, and the Herald supports a man for Congress who cast just that kind of vote. Truly, the Black Republicans are like the Dutchman's pig, quote, on both sides of the fence. There's no trusting them on any question. Okay? So, again, Valentine B. Horton, but what's the image we get? We get this image. Perfect camouflage, perfect mask. We're going to get into the reasoning why they wear these masks. Okay, now this is where we get into turbulent waters, family. Hold on to your seats. Strap in and hold on, because we are going to unmask some individuals. We're going to run this documentary. Before I do that, this is fair use. This is not for my own individual benefit. This is for entertainment purposes only. We're going to run this video, family, and this is a location off basically it's part of Charleston, South Carolina. It's, one of the islands there, and it's called Legare. Very few of us have heard of that, and there's a reason. And we're going to find out, but now we're going to unmask these individuals. Okay? So here we go. Fair use for entertainment purposes only.
We do have a museum in here, and it's not open right now. But this is where the 54th Regiment came on Solitary Island. This is where they stayed overnight. They had camp here, and this is where they stayed before they moved on. But they started here from the water. They came up from the water, and I think they end up on John's Island from here.
Solitary, a small coastal community on James Island, famous for its historic mosquito beach, a recreational oasis created by and for local African Americans, and one of only 6 beaches accessible to the African American community in the Charleston area during the segregated days of Jim Crow. The beach, whose boardwalk pavilion, restaurant, stores, music club, and hotels once attracted people from all over the Low Country and beyond, it's just a piece of what makes Solar Green so special.
The Solitary community is an island bordered by the Folly, some people say Folly, but we Solitary River on the front end, and on the back end we have the Holland Creek River, and we end up on the Stunno River, where we have a boat landing and newly paved and built pavilion on that end. We are a community of families, and one way or another, all of us are connected. The Richardsons, the Walkers, the Wilders, the Browns and the Backmans, the Greens, the Chavises, Wallaces are up there also, the Lafayette, the Gilliards, Singleton, and also the Grants that was here.
Now, family, take a snapshot of this if you can. Okay? These names are important. These are the families. Now, the one sister you saw there with the red dress, we're going to go back to her. She's a Chavis. Okay? These names are important. Now, if you notice something, right in the middle, the smallest little name there is Legare, right? we're going to continue here, though. Let's continue.
All of my lifetime. And so that's who we are. We are one man's children. There was an Englander that moved to the Charleston area in the 1800s. His name was Saul Legree. This land was actually abandoned because the white community found that it was hard to grow anything here. So in the essence of it, it was sold to 5 men, and those 5 men sold this portion to a family of freedmen. And so that's the Saul Legree community.
So talk about what Saul Legree was like when you were growing up.
It was paradise, and still is to me. Paradise because in this community, everybody was family, and still is, and nobody went hungry. We were taught the morals of life, not only by our parents, but any house that you passed in walking down the street, you had to govern yourself accordingly because those family members were watching out for you, and we were taught that we did not just represent ourselves, we represented our family, because the elders may not have known our names, but they knew who we are by the shape of our face and the structure of our body. They knew who we were. They could identify us, and they never really called your name. They just said, "Hey, you Tim and Joe Graham, come over here." You know, because that's what how they identified me. We really didn't even experience fenced yards. People may have had hedges, but you know, people left and came back home, and then they put up these big fences, and meaning that everybody else had to stay out or ask permission to come in, when we were accustomed to walking through each other's yard without a problem. So,
speaking of this village, when did you start noticing this village changing?
The transition of change began to happen once a lot of the family members began to sell out their property, and we identified a problem in that because they didn't have the same connection to the land that many of us who stayed here did. So it didn't bother them to sell it. It disturbed us at the core to know that they were just blatantly selling it off. It makes me feel very hurt and disappointed that so many of our children don't have the same connection to the land that we do and don't recognize the value of it. So my thoughts are, why are you going to sell land and go rent from somebody else? Well, that money don't last very long, you know. When people hear a figure like, oh, we're going to get $250,000 or $300,000 from the sale of this property, but divide that by 8 or even 10, you know, and because they had larger families back then. It's a hurtful thing because the people were holding on to the land for them to come back home and live here. And to know that they don't want to do that. It gives us a lot to think about.
Identification is definitely, you know, setting in from all ends and the middle. Now, do the residents really understand what is happening when you start selling your land like that? Probably not. But they're selling the land maybe because the kids are not coming back. However, when the land is sold to somebody, then you are not sure what they're going to do with it. And if they come in with a subdivision, so that starts, you know, at one end, and you could add on, and you go on down. For instance, at the beginning of Southerly Road, we have a new development there. I think it's about 36 homes that they built over there, Kings Flat. And further down, we have Brown Pelican is another community that has been built on Southerly Road. And then when you go to the end, you do see a totally different group of people there. Next thing you know, the community might be gone. So that's something that we don't want to see happen. We are trying to educate people, the children mostly, and grandchildren of the original property owners, to let them see they have some value in the land, and why not keep the land, and you spread it out among your family members. Because God is not making any more land.
So this land that we're on right now, about how many heirs you think are tied into this property right here?
Besides my father's 9 sisters and brothers and 3 more cousins, I'd say about 12.
12 of you. And does your land go from that water all the way to the dam?
Yes.
Yes. What do you feel is the disconnect between your generation and maybe the younger Richardsons in terms of having a value and a love for this land? What do you think is the disconnect between the two generations?
Really teaching them the value of the land. The generation now don't see the prosper of this land and what it values because they into a different life. When we are the adults now know that our value of our property and would like to keep it in the family because of the beauty of it and what our ears, our ancestors have developed it for us. Why can't we keep it like that?
And is someone in your generation teaching that to the younger generation?
We are trying.
Yeah.
We are trying.
So
Teach our children, and our children teach our grandchildren. The value of our great-grandfather, our grandfather, this property is beautiful. Don't let it go.
And this property that we're on now, whose family does this belong to?
The Singleton family.
This is y'all. So from here, back across the street?
Way back to the dike, back to the water, from water to water.
Okay.
As a matter of fact, my grandmother, Sarah Singleton, she owns about 8 acres of land on that island over there.
Oh, what island is that?
Dixon Island.
Dixon Island, okay. I mean, seeing this is so beautiful. Why do you think that there are younger people my age who may have ties to this land that don't want this? Like, why wouldn't they want this?
Well, I think the younger generation didn't grow up in this area, so they don't have a feel for the value of the land. And another thing is economics. It has become very expensive to develop property over here now because we're in a flood zone. It's very expensive, and a lot of young people can't afford it, so then they tend to go further inland where properties are more affordable to build. And I think that's one of the main reasons. But we've been blessed here because all of our properties that you can see around us has been inhabited by descendants of our parents and grandparents.
Prophetess, what do you think?
I agree with her because economics plays a great deal in it. It costs a lot to build houses over here. So it is ways that, in a sense, it kind of bind you in terms of having to build your property yourself. And one thing I'm grateful for is that our forefathers is that they left this inheritance. And just like the word of God tells us to leave an inheritance for your children and your children's children. And that is what they have done. And it saddens me when the property is being sold because to me what they did for us, you can't put a monetary value on it. Then I think some goes back to educating them the importance of what was given to us.
Okay, family, we're going to quickly get into the next one. Now, remember those names at the Sol Legare Islands? And we're going to get into this next one before we start going over the information and evidence here. Let's find out what this is. Go back here. And this is the, that was Sol Legare. Now this will be the Snowden community. Write that name down, Snowden. Again, this is fair use. This is not for my own personal benefit. This is for educational purposes only.
have people coming in, of course, they want to buy. You see people riding through all the time trying to look. And people want what we have. So, and I think right now, as a community, we need to see the value in what we have and hold on to it.
This portion of Snowden is my family, the German family, track. Another heir's property. Has been in the family for generation. And further up, as you can see some docks over there. That's Reverend Stokes. That's his family track of property. And we just left the Grants track.
Right.
And like I said, this has been in the family for generations. And you can see why it's valuable.
One of the last remaining African American communities in Mount Pleasant, surrounded by waterfront property. Snowden sits in the most expensive area to live in South Carolina. The value of land ownership is something that has been preached in the community and is taking hold in a new generation.
Snowden was in existence since Reconstruction. Former slaves and others, they either bought some of the land or some was given, I guess, by former slave owners or however they got it. And then families began, to build homes. And
Just wanted to stop her right there, family. What did she say? She said, "Oh, former slaves who either bought land or land was given to them by their former slave masters." I mean, that is a funny comedic line, and that kind of comedy. Yeah, we may be able to sell that to Chris Rock there. That's so funny. But let's continue.
and have children, and soon everybody kind of became related because this one married this one and that. So we're all pretty much related here. We share a deep history.
What I really, really like about Snowden is they're very supportive of each family, is very supportive. And whenever something happened to one, everyone else is there. And I love it for that reason. That's why I came back home, because this is where I was born. But I left for over 30 years, came back.
Now, as time's gone by, it's gone from a sleepy town to the most expensive city to live in South Carolina. Has that affected your community at all?
I think it has. Well, Snowden, I guess we're one of the last remaining strongholds as you consider black communities, because a lot of our black communities are being gentrified. So whereas, as you can hear the traffic noise all around us, we couldn't hear that traffic noise once upon a time. I remember when I was little, because none of this stuff was here, if we heard an ambulance or a fire truck, everybody would follow the fire truck or get on the phone. Where did that fire truck go?
Right.
Now, we don't pay it any attention because it goes by all the time. But I think one of the impacts is that because Mount Pleasant is considered one of the fastest growing cities in South Carolina, the average home that they're building now is probably about 400,000. We have people coming in, of course, they want to buy. You see people riding through all the time trying to look. And one of the things that I've learned, too, when it comes to black communities, where they want to try to get our land, but they want to buy it for cheap, So we need to know the value in ourselves.
And why this is so valuable, it stops right here. You're looking at creek and marshland leading to the Wando River, and majority of this property probably for the 5-7 mile stretch belongs to people in the community. And this tract is probably one of the largest tracts still owned predominantly by the black family members that lived in this area since slavery. This is a classic example with the house being built behind us, family members passing that ownership of the property down to through the generation.
I got you.
I know, man. This is it. I can get family back here.
Yeah.
100%.
So dope, bro. This is really...
For my ancestors to get to Charleston, there's some just on the other side of that. They would cut the palmetto tree down and lay it across the marsh until they actually get down to the river. And they took their goods in and out of Snowden via boat. And rode all the way to the markets in Charleston.
Did y'all utilize this land? Did you play in the water, fish in the water? Like, what did y'all do with it?
Absolutely. I mean, we fished, played in the water, went swimming in the water. Like I said, Hugo took that dock out. That's the dock that I remember. The head of that dock is where we swam. There's a lot of clam beds in here that, yes, some family members still come in here and dig clams up out of the area, clams and mussels, as well as crabs. So they provided seafood not only for my family but for pretty much all the families that live in the area. Like I said, the noise you're hearing, when I was growing up, we didn't have the boats, the party boats like you can see over here in the river. That's just encroachment from the development here.
Okay. So I can definitely see why somebody could look at all of this and want in. Has there been hardships in terms of people being able to keep land in the family, or has that been kind of an easy transition?
Well, not too much of a hardship. As a matter of fact, it goes back down to the years, especially after we developed this community organization, that all of our meetings, most of them, we used to encourage the people that if you got some property that you want to sell, use word of mouth within the community so that it could stay in the community. But I might add, it's founded, we have like Lone Point subdivision, classic development, with houses, $400,000+ on one side, and then on the other side you have Bell Hall, same picture, this view that sits on the Wonder River, and then in the front part of us, there's Lee Farm, been there for a long time. So you can see that we're surrounded by heavy, expensive development. And fear is that those developments could cause taxes to rise into this area, and that's where the word gentrification drift in, because really they can push your tax so high that you can't afford to stay in it.
We've been impacted by people trying to come in and buy and change it and move in. And right now we also, even with the sewer issue, most of the community has sewer. I would say maybe 100 homes or so still have septic tanks. So we're right now with the town of Mount Pleasant, trying to force us into the town so that we can get sewer. So we're faced with things of that nature. So we're working hard on that as well right now.
So from your perspective, what's the benefit of not being associated with the town of Mount Pleasant?
Well, I think by not being associated with the town, it's because they have so many strategies that they would put on us to make it harder for us, because the family here is like low to moderate income, and they would send everything up so high, and the people would end up losing their land. That's why I'm not interested in community annexing into the town because of that reason. They just want your land for nothing. They think that you shouldn't even know anything about how to maintain your property. But we're not going to just let them come in and fine us for any little thing and then end up taking our land.
Okay, family. So we got to view that those beautiful islands and beautiful locations there that very few of us had ever heard of, and we're going to get into many of the individuals. And let's first start with Sol Legare. Okay, Sol Legare. Who was Sol Legare, right? So I did his genealogy, and the Legare family is very distinguished, and I went way back to the 1500s, and I stopped on the paternal line. But we're going to show us a few of the Legare male paternal individuals, so everyone will get a clarity on who was Sol Legare. This island is named after him, right? So let's first start with James. Now this is what they don't do, family, on purpose. Now, Sol Legare, that's the name of the island. Sol is actually his middle name. They don't disclose his first name. The first name is James. Now, there's also a James Island there. That's what it's called, James Island, but that's his first name, James Sol Legare, right? And he was born in 1805 and died in 1883. He's the son of Thomas Legare, Thomas Solomon Legare, and then so on. But let's look a little bit. Let's look at James Legare, who's born in 1805, because he's key here. He's very, very key. But let's first start here, and I want to show this here. Let's blow this up so everyone can see this here. Okay. Let's make it bigger. Bigger. Now, the great A1, I'm talking this one, did a build on this here on William Ellison. Okay. And, again, as an investigative detective, it's about making contribution in the form of bringing forth evidence and information to help solve this great mystery and free us here, right? And many investigative detectives will make very impactful contributions. So impactful, it can change lives. And if so, that's what it's about, making impactful contributions that can change lives. And I've been involved with this information, since I was 10 years old. And so in the mid 80s, I was involved with ASCAT, which is a group started by people like Van Sertima, Runoko Rashidi. And so I was spending a lot of time with them, helping them. And I remember Carter G. Woodson's popular for all of us, very familiar with his work. But this one particular work, Free Negro Owners of Slaves in the U.S. in the year 1870, no one talked about that. No one discussed it. No one brought this particular work by the great Carter G. Woodson. And I guess at the time, Mr. Woodson I think he brought this work for a purpose, for the future generation, right? To help the future generation reclaim a lot of their estates. I think that's, I believe that to be the case with Mr. Woodson. And that impactful contribution that he made, nearly 80 years later, who brought this information first? I saw it when A1 did his build on the melanated slave owners in the South. And, he had William Ellison in there. He had a few others in there. And then when I saw that, I had to get a copy of this work for myself. And I did a deeper dig on this here, family, right? Now, there's two parts to this work. And it's the other title is the absentee ownership. Actually, the absentee owners, that's dealing with the heir's property. Okay? And we're going to show examples of that. Now, so the melanated slave owners, Mr. Carter G. Woodson listed many of them in this work. Not all of them, but many of them. Okay? Now, we just finished watching Descendants of the Sol Legare community there in South Carolina. And let's first get into Mr. Sol Legare here. We'll first start with the 1850 census. Okay? 1850 census. Pre-1870. Remember 1870 Naturalization Act? Persons of African descent or African nativity can become citizens of the United States. This is before that, 1850. And let's zoom in. Zoom in. Okay. And this is actually the slave schedule. Okay, so this is the federal slave schedule. And as you know, on the slave schedule, they never list the names of the slaves, just the owners. Okay, so this is the slave schedule. Slave inhabitants in St. John's. Okay, so St. John's Island. That's what we just saw there in the documentary. So Legare Island. It's called St. John's. Okay. The 8th day of October, 1850. So let's see who's on here. Oh, wait a minute. No, excuse me. Let me back up. Let's back up. Let's back up. That is different one there. Here, this one here. This one here. Okay, this one here, family. This one here. Okay, yes, this is the 1850. Right there, 1850. Slave schedule, slave inhabitants. Okay? And right here is James Legare. Okay? Let's zoom in so everyone can see. James Legare. Okay? Now, let's look at some of these categories. Number of slaves, description, age of the slave owner. See that? Names of slave owners. 37 at the time in 1850. Sex, right? And color, B for black. All right? Now, over here, James Legare. 29, male, black. Now, there's a lot of Legares in the family. Okay? So they didn't hide it. But a lot of people didn't know about Mr. Legare family, right? So, now, who were his slaves? There has to be a reason why they don't give names, right? Because you can get everyone's name on a census, you know, on a regular census, they give names. So, but that's another story that we won't get into. We're just going to get into just who these individuals are. Now, James Legare. Now, how do we know that Sol Legare is James Legare? Well, this is the benefits of when you do these deep dive into your research. Let's pull up the 1830 census. Okay, this is the 1830 census. All right, so let's blow it up. So we saw him there in 1850. Now, how do we know that Sol is his middle name? Okay, well, here it is. This is the heads of families. Okay. And this is the, let's look down here and find him. The one that we want to get to here. No, wait a second here. Okay, James Legare here. James Legare, okay? And I says he has a brother here, Thomas. But this isn't, hold on a second here. Let me get to the one. I found to 1830. This one. Wait a minute. This is it. This is it. What's wrong on here? And this is, you know, what genealogists do here, right? Thomas Legare. Okay, here, family. Let's blow it up right here. And let's blow it up so everyone can see. There, James Sol Legare, right there. It's his middle name. So that's how we can confirm, and now we see who the island is named after. And this was the one who was born in 1805. Okay, now, and let's now go to more evidence to support who he was and that he was melanated, right? Let's go to here. let's pull up. I actually took snapshots of sections of the Carter G. Woodson work. Okay. And let's go here. Okay, so these are snapshots. Now let's get a better image. I think this one here, best image. These are snapshots of the inside of the book. Now let's zoom in so everyone can see. Inside of Carter G. Woodson's book, Negro Slave Owners. Okay? Boom, right there. James Legare and his brother Thomas Legare. Okay? Now, this is the absentee owners. If you notice, the category is slaves and then total family number. If you notice, 49 balanced number, absentee. So what that means is that the property here, or this plantation that's on this property, has been passed down to generation of the Legare line. Hence, the original owners absent, absentee ownership, hence heirship property. Okay, so this is James Legare, 4949 on his residence, and then Thomas Legare, his brother, and then his sister's up here as well. It's a huge family, but we see that. So here's James Sol Legare inside of Carter G. Woodson's book titled Negro Slave Owners. Okay. Now, we're going to get into this. The sister in the documentary, what did she say? It's important that the younger generation understand the importance of land because our ancestors passed it down to us, right? That's what she said. So we are going to get into, I actually have these Legare last will and testament, okay, of one of James Sol Legare's ancestors, his great-great-grandfather, Solomon Legare. And so let's pull this up. Let's get the first one. Okay. And this is going to be shocking information here. Where's the first one? Someone will. Okay, here it is here. Last will and testament. Okay, last will and testament of Solomon Legare. Okay, now Solomon Legare family, right here. Will of Solomon Legare. Let's blow it up, make it bigger so everyone can see. Okay. Now Solomon Legare was born in 1703 and died 1772. This will is dated 1772, and his father is Francis Solomon Legare, born 1674. And let's get into a little bit about this elements of this will, because this will is telling as well. In the name of God, amen. I, Solomon Legare of Charlestown in the province of South Carolina, Tanner, being of sound and disposing mind and memory, of considering an uncertainty of this transitory life and the certainty of death, do make, publish, and declare this my last will and testament in the manner and form following. Now let's get down to some other parts here. And my body at death I commit to the earth, to be buried in a decent and Christian manner at the discretion of my executrix and executors herein after named, in hopes of the glorious resurrection to life and immortality by the body power of God. And as for and concerning my worldly estate and all such lands and tenements, goods and chattels, as it hath pleased God to bestow upon me, I will and desire that the same and every part and parcel thereof shall go and be disposed of, as hereinafter respectively is directed, and not otherwise. Okay, so I give and bequeath, I give, devise, and bequeath unto my dearly beloved wife, Amy Legare, for and during her natural life, the use of my whole estate, both real and personal, with power and authority to her, my said wife, by her last will and testament, to otherwise to give, bequeath, settle, or dispose of those my 4 Negroes or slave wenches, females, severally named Noel, Chloe, Peg, and Catherine, and each and every of them, and their and every or any of their respective future issue and increase, to all any of such of my sons, namely Solomon Legare the younger, Thomas Legare the younger, and Daniel Legare the younger, or of my grandchildren, which shall be living at the time of her decease, as aforesaid, or any of them, and under or with such respective limits. Now let's go to page 2. Let's go to page 2. Okay, here's page 2 here. Now I want to get here. Now this is key here. Then it is in my will. Let's blow it up so everyone can see. Make it bigger. Sorry about that. Right there. That should be big enough. Then it is my will that he shall be allowed to have and take to his own proper use and behalf all these my 4 Negroes, men, slaves, severally named Caesar, Boston, and Stepney, now being tanners. So these particular slaves were tanners. Okay, well, what are tanners, family? Okay, let's look this up here. Tanners, got the definitions right here. Many colonists depended on the tanner. One was the shoemaker. The shoemaker needed leather from the tanner so he could make shoes for colonists. Another was the farmer. He needed leather to make his saddle and bridle. The tanner's process was long. Colonial tanners used at least 8 different tools to do their job. The tools were made of wood and metal. The vat hook was a long wood handle with a metal hook at the end. It was made to move leather. It was also used for dipping leather in and out of the pits. So basically, these slaves, or more properly termed employees, their job, they were tanners. And so they helped make the hides and the leather hides and covers for many different products. Okay, let's get back to the will. Get back to the will. Okay. Okay. And June being a cooper. Okay, that's another job function. So what are coopers? Let's look that up. Okay, so coopers. Coopers in colonial America were standard fixtures on ships, as well as on plantations, breweries, wineries, distilleries, and other industry that required containers for the commodities they produced. To put it in modern terms, you know those big shipping containers that bring stuff to your local Walmart? Or how about those beautiful brown boxes that come to your door from Amazon.com? So basically today, family, we use boxes to put products in to ship off. back in these days, they used these big wooden barrels, right, to store stuff in to ship off, be it alcohol or other products. These big wooden like barrels here. So these people who did this particular work were called coopers. Okay, let's get back to his will. Part 2. Okay, so that's interesting that we actually confirmed during the time a so-called slave, their job function. One was a tanner, and another was a cooper, which is a job. So basically, employees, being that was the business that this particular Legare was into during his day there. Okay. Now let's get to part 3, which gets into his land holdings. His land holdings. Now remember, family, Solomon Legare is born in 1703. And I know his genealogy. He's not from anywhere from Africa. And if there are Africans brought over and then they became, successful businessmen and landowners, please bring that slavery system back in 2021. We need a whole lot of that. Believe me, a whole lot of that, right? Now, let's get into his land holdings, family. I believe it is actually part 4. Let's go to part 4. Part 4. Okay, here, let's blow it up so everyone can see it. Right here. See what kind of land holdings Solomon had here. Okay. Now let's make it a little smaller there. Okay, that's good. Okay, here, right here. Hopefully you can see that. Okay. I give and devise unto my loving son, Solomon Legare the younger, at the decease of her, my said wife Amy, and to his heirs and assigns forever 300 acres of my land situate on John's Island. That's a place we just saw in the documentary. Collector County in this province. Now, this is key here. Consisting of that 250 acres, which was given unto me by my late deceased father. That's key, family. So that of the 300 acres he's given to his son, 250 acres was passed down to him from his father. Okay, and his father was Thomas Solomon Legare, born in 1674, who got a land patent for 250 acres. Okay, 1674, born, and so he was, one of the early arrivals there in South Carolina at that time. Okay, so once you guys can do your own genealogy research on this particular Solomon Legare and the Legare family, you will find incredible information. So now his father, before him, was issued a land patent for 250 acres, and he's passing that on, of course, to his son. Now let's continue, because he had more. Okay. Item I give and devise unto my loving son Thomas Legare the younger, at the decease of my said wife Amy, and to her heirs, and assigns forever the remaining part of my lands situated on John's Island, which we just saw, aforesaid, consisting of 640 acres. That is to say, 540 acres, which was sold to me by the executors of the last will and testament of William Wilkins, the elder, late deceased, and 100 acres, which was sold to me by the executors of the last will and testament of Thomas Jenks, also late deceased, etc. So 300 acres to his son, 250 of which his father gave to him, and he's giving 640 acres to his other son. Okay? Now, these are melanated individuals. I thought that, based upon the Pan-Africans' argument, that slaves couldn't own land, right? Who were really the slaves, right? But we know that. So let's continue here. Okay, these are buildings here, and I will just show here the last page of Solomon Legare's will. It's the last page. So, okay. I, the said Solomon Legare, have hereunto set my hand and seal this 13th day of January in the 12th year of the reign of our sovereign Lord King George III, and in the year of our Lord Christ 1772. This is all before the United States of America there, the federal court, way before they were set up. Okay, so his lord was King George III, and you do your own research on the Legare family, you'll understand why he has allegiance to said King George III. Okay, so that is the Legare name. These individuals whose name is placed on that island that we just saw. And now we understand who they really were. Okay, so that's just a tidbit I showed you, family, just a little bit. Now let's move on to the next individual on that list, and the female who was a descendant, or the male. This was let's go to the female there. She had the name Gilliard. Okay, let me just remind the family here. Hope you guys took a screenshot of this. Let's hope y'all took a screenshot of this. Let me see. Remember those names, family, on that island? The Gilliards, the Richardsons, the Chavis. Remember those names? Okay, now we're going to go. Let's quickly show the Chavis here. All right? Chavis. Remember that name? On that island, the female, she was a Chavis. So here's her ancestor, one of their ancestors, Alfred Chavis, a Confederate soldier. Now, on that island, family, Legare Island, when the war broke out, the Union Army came down and attempted to try to take control of it. But they don't tell you the truth. They actually were. Now, remember in the documentary, she said, oh, they came for one day and then they went back. No, the real deal is they got their butts kicked by the Confederates. And they had to leave that island. And so those landowners on that island fought for their land. And they're all on the Confederate side. And then the lady in the documentary, she's a Chavis. Her ancestor is Alfred Chavis, a Confederate soldier. Okay, 26th Regiment, South Carolina Infantry. Right? Now, let's get a little bit more information on Mr. Chavis here real quick. We're not going to go too deep into Chavis, but just so the family will get a clear understanding on who Mr. Chavis was. Okay, now here's the 1860 census, family. Let's blow it up. Okay. Here it is here. 18th century census, free inhabitants. Okay, free inhabitants. Chavis was not a slave. And see, we have to be honest with ourselves, family. You get descendants, and this is personal for me because, you know, my one of my cousins who's teaches genealogy, and you know we have these family reunions, and the one, you know, I never went because I never agreed to how she spun the story about one of the ancestor that they like to highlight being a Presley, who built and founded and built 4 churches in DeSoto Parish, Louisiana, right? And maybe one of my future presentations, I'll get into that information. But it'll be your own family members who will continue promoting the false narratives, this false slave narratives of their own ancestors. So just like the lady in the documentary, she called her own ancestor a slave when she knows the truth, because these families on these islands keep their genealogical records. It's been passed down to them for the last 1,000 years. I mean, I want you all to take those names and do a deep dig on them like I did. I don't have time to get into one of the families, like the Gaylords. I went back 1,000 years. So, but here on this 1860 census, free inhabitants, and let's find Mr. Chavis on here. Alfred Chavis. Okay, let's see. Right here, family, right there. Let's blow it up so everyone can see. Everyone can see. Right there. Alfred Chavis, 22 years old. And just so we know that he's melanated, right here, where it says color, and you see that? B for black. Chavis, right there. Alfred Chavis. So we're not confused on this. Another landowner whose present day descendant, we all saw his descendant, okay? That's why she owns all that land, because of her ancestor here. Now, his ancestors passed it down to him as well. We're not going to get too deep. I just want to show you that about Chavis. Now, there's another name, if you remember, family. Richardson, right? Remember that name on there on the Legare Island, Richardson, right? So we'll briefly pull this information on Richardson right here. This is the 1850 census here. (1850) again, free inhabitants. And here's the Richardson name right here. Okay, it's the Richardson name. Let's blow it up. Richardson name here, and the children, and right here, Josh Richardson, the young son at the age of 7, right there. And I did a deep dig on this family, the Richardson line. And here's Wilder. That was the other name on there, Wilder. They're all on this list, family. As a matter of fact, when you look at the Carter G. Woodson work, thanks to A1 on this here, you go through those names, you'll see on the under South Carolina, you'll see a lot of those names on these census as well, right? So now let's get to Gilead, okay? Or no, Gaylord. That's another name there, Gaylord. And let's start here. Gaylord. And let's first start here. Now, that again, that Gaylord line family, genealogical line, I went back 1,000 years, and I just stopped. But here is another snapshot inside of Carter G. Woodson's book, Negro Slave Owners. Okay, and let's blow it up so everyone can see. There it is. There he is, Theodore Gaylord. Okay, Theodore Gaylord. Now, Theodore was born in 1770. Theodore Gaylord, right there. And again, this is in the section of absentee ownership, which tells you see 1111. Whenever you have the perfectly balanced number, that deals with heirs property. That the property was passed down generation to generation. And it goes back to Joaquin Gaylord, who's born in 1625, and Bartholomew, then his son Bartholomew, born in 1667, and then Theodore, and then now Bartholomew was the one who came and naturally settled, one of the early settlers in that area of Charleston, South Carolina, in the year 1686, I believe. Now I'm going to show an image of that here. So, but we see that clearly Theodore Gaylord's name's in there, right there in Carter G. Woodson's book. Now, let's go to Theodore Gaylord's last will and testament. Got his too. Again, I found a glitch with Ancestry family. That's why I get all this information. Exploiting that glitch. Okay. Will of Theodore Gaylord. Okay. In the name of God, amen. I, Theodore Gaylord, of the province of South Carolina, in the parish of St. James, Santee Planter, St. James, right? Do make and ordain this to be my last will and testament as follows. I give to my wife, Lydia, the 6 Negroes here named, Port, his wife, Lucy, Charles, his wife, Bina, Sabi, and Marion. Also, all my household goods, all my breeding cattle, 2 horses, and a riding chair. All right, now let's get to his land holdings, family. Let's get to his land holdings. Let's get to his land holdings here. Now, this here, right here. It is my will and desire that my Wamba plantation, where I now live, containing about 1,450 acres of land, I give to my son John and his heirs on the following condition: that he do give his bond or obligation to my son Charles or to any one of my executors for the sum of 1,500 pounds sterling moneys, drawing 4% interest to be applied to the maintenance and education of my grandsons, the sons of my son Charles Gaylord. Okay, so that was the condition. 1,550 acres with some conditions there, right, to one of his sons. And let's get to part 2 here of his will. Let's blow it up so everyone can see. I give and bequeath to my son Peter and heirs forever my lands and Stephen Parish, where he now lives, and plants containing about 1,400 acres. 1,500 acres to one son family, 1,400 acres to another son. And this Theodore Gaylord was in Carter G. Woodson's book. You see why they buried this information of Pan-Africans for 80 years until A1 brought it out to the world? You see why? Now, let's move on to Snowden. Now, the one video we saw was called the Snowden community, right? The Snowden community. But who was Snowden? Has a community named after him, right? So, let's get into Mr. Snowden here. Now, you have a Charles Snowden, who was born in 1736, and then his son was William Estill Snowden, born in 1790, and then there was another son, Reverend Charles Snowden, born in 1785. So he had two sons there, okay? So we're going to look here now, family, at the 1850 census, okay? 1850 census. Go to the top. And this is, no, excuse me, not the slave and slave schedules, family. Slave schedules. Again, St. John, same location. You see the year, 8th day of October, 1850. Okay? So they only give the names of the slave owners. Just the name of the slave owners. And go down here. Boom, right there, family. Right there. Let's blow it up so everyone can see. Right there. 1850 census, William Snowden. Okay, son of Charles Snowden. At this time in 1850, he's 60 years old. So it means he was born in 1790, like I just told you. Now, how do we know he's melanated? Well, we have this 1010. Approximately means the same, right? Let's go up to the top. And right there, under the heading color, B for black. So, Mr. Snowden has a town named after him, the Snowden, which we all just saw, the second documentary, was also melanated. Not a slave, but melanated. Now let's go to Charles Snowden's will, last will and testament. Okay, hopefully everyone can see that. I'll make it a little bigger. Make it a little bigger. In the name of God, amen. I, Charles Snowden, resident of Charleston, South Carolina, being of perfect mind and memory, right, but in a weak and low state of health, and knowing it is appointed unto all men once to die, to make and ordain this my last will and testament. All right. Now, again, let's get to his land holdings here. Now, Snowden is a little bit unique here, family. Okay, item I possess in the state of Georgia the following property received in payment from Aeneas Cooper on joint account with James Bolgen, now deceased, 1/2 of one tract of land of 900 acres in Burke County. That's Burke County, Georgia, He has 900 acres. One half of another tract in said county, 700 acres. One half of another tract of 287.5 acres, situated in Wilkes County. Also another tract of land received in payment of John Arnold on my soon account, my own account, number of acres not just now recollected, which I sold about 3 years past. Okay, so Charles Snowden had land in Georgia, totaling nearly 900, over 1,000 acres of land in Georgia. Okay, and let's get over to this last page here. So, and then here he gets into dollars he's giving away, dollars to his offspring here, etc. Let's see. Okay, so there it is, family. So landowners here, and who were melanated, and not who they told us they were. And of course, we didn't hear, many of us had never heard of these individuals. We had never heard of Legare Island, Snowden, the community, Snowden community. We heard of heirs property, but they really focused on the ones that got duped. Like the family in Louisiana we saw before through that legal device, and that's how they managed to take away heirs property. But now we have evidence that there are families right now who held on to their property, but these families are distinguished individuals who played part in setting up, this present day United States Federal Republic that we're in, and all of whom have land patents. Okay, so when you're talking heirs property, that's property passed down generation to generation, and the very first individual at that time received a land grant, aka land patent. So, but now, unfortunately, there are many people trying to move into there, take over their land, build up these resorts, communities there. And we learned in the Snowden documentary that it's the most expensive real estate in all of South Carolina now. Waterfront homes. Now, like I said, family, it's time to find your estate because it could be out there. And we can't waste time, entertaining, fictitious stories about some far off continent, because those are diversions. And again, we don't have time to waste. So let's end it there, and we will get into further information regarding this in future presentations. I want to thank everyone for tuning in, taking time out. I know it's late there, especially on the East Coast there. But again, family, now we know the real deal here. So remember, the Afrocentrics are right. Slaves can't own land. That's true. So, but the real slave is still to be discussed, who that was, right? And these people definitely were not taken from some African nation over, because if they were, and once they became wealthy, the first thing they would have, first of all, we know pursuant to the Naturalization Act, these people were citizens before 1870. So their class, social class was free white persons, pursuant to the census that we all just saw with our own eyes. Paul Cuffey's on it, the Gilliam's on it, the Legare's on it, and then we see them in Carter G. Woodson's work. So remember, these things of these socially constructed terms are social terms or social classes. Has nothing to do with hue. And we'll never make the mistake of trying to place anyone who's melanated or dark complexion on one little specific location on the planet. That's a mistake. Don't fall for the sorcery by those promoting that. Okay, so again, thanks for tuning in, family. And we're going to get back into it again very, very soon. And A1 will get in. I think we're going to have something next week with a special guest, a distinguished scholar who's done incredible work. A1 will tell you guys more about that. Hopefully he's not. You around, A1? Hopefully he's still around here. Hold on a sec, family. Let's get him on board here. All right, hopefully he's not asleep there, family. But okay, I will close out here, family. And again, thanks for tuning in. Let's stop the share screen there. And again, if anyone needs any of the information I presented, my email, I believe everyone should not have that. I will put it in the, let's see here. I'll put it in the chat again for everyone just in case someone wants copies of this information. Drop my email. Again for the family. Put my email here. Okay, there's my email there, family. So don't hesitate to reach out to me if you need any of this evidence for your records. Okay, everyone have a good night. I will check out and try to contact A1 so he can close out this live stream.